Hey everyone. I haven't been biking in a while. It's been kind of windy and cold here. 40 and 50 degrees is cold. I know Doug in Ohio rides in the snow, and that's not the kind of riding I do. So I appreciate you, Doug. The last Stromer video I made was kind of a rant about Stromer pulling out of North America and how poorly that was executed. Now, for those of you who didn't watch the video, I did reach out to Stromer when they made the announcement that they were leaving North America. And after seeing a ton of questions online and talking to my local dealers and people that sold me the bike, they didn't have any idea what was going on either. I fired off an email to Stromer. After a week, they never replied, and maybe that was poor expectations on my part of responding to kind of a nobody. So after talking to more people and seeing the confusion online and given the silence from Stromer, I decided to make a video explaining that, hey, I understand the position you're in, but there's a lot of people with questions and uncertainty, which then leads to fear. And there's some things that I think they could have executed better on, and they still had an opportunity to fix. After I posted the video, I did have somebody from Stromer North America reach out to me, and they were extremely both sympathetic and empathetic to my concerns, but they were also losing their job, but they were willing to help get the message to corporate that people were confused. The CEO of Stromer did reach out with a very kind email where he said that, quoting here, we recognize that our communication fell short of several areas and didn't meet the high standards that they strive for. And I think that set the tone for what was really going on. The other thing that he explained was that the decision they made to pull out of North America obviously wasn't easy, but that the way they were doing it, something wasn't effective, and that they needed time to regroup or restructure kind of the strategy for servicing North America. It sounds down the road, whenever that might be, that they have an intention at least to potentially come back. Or at least that's what they're trying to figure out. But whatever they were doing currently, that it wasn't economically viable. As I did more research on this topic, you can just search on YouTube or any of the bike news, and there's a lot of bike companies that are in the same boat. They're either downsizing or struggling or pulling out altogether. And I'm not really sure what's driving that. My assumption is that when COVID hit, people were sitting at home, and if you remember, everybody wanted to be outside and go do things, even though everything was closed. So you saw things like RV sales go up, camping sales went up, anything to do with the outdoors was super popular, to include buying bikes. If you remember, you couldn't almost buy a bike. One, the supply chain was really challenging, and then B, the demand for these bikes was incredible. And then on top of that, it was stimulus money. People had a little bit of extra cash flow or a little bit of extra disposable income, depending on their situation. You saw the demand for these things increase over time. I bought my bike after the pandemic, but there were still supply chain lags and things like that. It took me a long time to get this bike. So I think that's what kind of drove some of this problem. And then on top of that, if you were a bike dealer and you were on the tail end of the peak and you bought a lot of inventory, and then as people went back to work and lives and things like that, you were then sitting on all this inventory. And then on top of that, prices of everything else went up. So you had this inflationary pressure that hit just the overall market coming out of the pandemic. And it took a while for inflation to come back down, but prices still remained high. Year over year, prices are increasing at a normal rate, but that spike never goes back down. It became harder for people to afford, at least here, these expensive bikes. This is not a Stromer issue, but just any bikes in general that were expensive. You started to see the popularity shift to these more affordable bikes from overseas that I indicated in my last video, where they were in the $1,500 to $2,000 to maybe $3,000 price range, as opposed to the $10,000 and above bikes, even the $5,000 and above bikes. It was a perfect storm for these bike companies to struggle, because you had to commit to a certain amount of inventory in some of these brands, and then nobody was buying them, so you sat there on inventory. And as the years cycle through, you're sitting on last year's models, so then you have to deeply discount what you bought at probably a loss to try to get the newer inventory in. So it's just this perpetual cycle. And you're seeing that in mountain bikes now, and you're seeing that in other brands. And so I think Stromer fell into the same situation where the people selling the bikes had to commit to inventory that wasn't really selling, or selling at a slower pace than what they were buying at. At least that's my perspective on it. But back to my interaction with Stromer directly, like I said, it was extremely collaborative back and forth. They watched the video. I asked them if they wanted me to take it down, and they said no, which I may still take it down. There's no point in keeping it up there. But the positive thing is they did listen. So I mentioned in my video, like, you should have FAQs, and they responded to that. Yeah, you're right, we should do that. And so you saw FAQs come out on their website. Now, I think they could still do better. I think there's an opportunity to get a little bit more detailed on some of the items, but at least there's something there. And the other thing is, they did improve the communication from the initial email that went out, and they sent out a clarifying email to all their customers, and I think that put a lot of people at ease. So they did listen, and they did respond, and I think that speaks volumes as a company, that they can recognize, hey, maybe we didn't do this as well as we could have, and let's go ahead and start taking corrective action. So I applaud Stromer for that. And like I said, I love my bike and I love the brand, and that's why I was so passionate about understanding what was going on. And I guess the key main points that Stromer's communicated, and I'll just echo, is your service person, or whoever your service provider is, that's your main point of communication with Stromer. So if you have questions about your bike, your warranty, parts, accessories, you can go to wherever you get your bike serviced or whoever you bought your bike from, and that's how you're going to get whatever you need. The other thing I found out is that during the time in between the first email and the second email that they sent out, they did finally meet with all the dealers. So they did get everybody synced up on how this was all going to work, because if you remember, the dealers and the service people had no idea, and they were in the dark just like their customers. That has all been fixed. So now everybody's on the same page. They know how to get help. They have resources to do that. They know how to get parts. Now, the reality is getting parts could be challenging, not from a fact of they don't make them. It's just a challenge of getting them shipped from A to B, depending on what the repair that you have. So if you blow a motor, for example, That might take a while to get just based on shipping times. The reality is that most of the equipment that's on the bikes is pretty much off the shelf. Pads, brakes in general, the lights, tires, wheels, hubs, like all of that is pretty available anywhere in the market. Things that are a little bit more difficult would be the motor, the pinion, the Omni display, the ABS system, torque sensors, the battery. Those are going to be more Stromer specific. And then whatever internal hardware guts that might be in the bike that are proprietary to Stromer, those would be probably harder to get or require some sort of shipping to happen. So be too worried about things going off the rails, and just know that if something that is Stromer specific goes off the rails, then there's going to be some shipping considerations that you're going to have to make. The other thing that Stromer's been really focusing on in their communication, both to me personally and then just broadly, is the warranty. I think they want to try to put people at rest as far as if your bike is under warranty, that no matter what, they're going to honor that. And so that's a good news story as well. The other thing that Stromer talked about was firmware updates. That's not going to be a problem moving forward. And the other thing that they mentioned was the cell connectivity through the bike. That's already been taken care of, and there's no worry about that. That'll continue to operate. If the bike gets stolen, are you going to be able to track it? All of that is going to be fine. So nothing to worry about there. So overall, the interaction between Stromer and myself has been super positive. I'm super grateful in how they responded and the immediate actions that they took to try to put everybody at ease. And I think, again, that just speaks volumes to them as a company. And I have nothing but well wishes for them, and I hope they come back to North America because they build one of the best bikes on the planet. I'm excited to see their concepts of a solid state battery and how they continue to innovate their bikes. I'm not as anxious as I was 2 months ago. The time and effort they took to respond personally to me and then also to the broad customer base just shows that, hey, we're doing this because we have to, not because we want to, and we're trying to figure out how to make it better down the road. And so that to me is good news. So with that, I'll leave you. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for watching, and I do have more bike videos to make, so continue to watch, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.